good.
What's this?
Mikey?
Yeah.
Observation 1 is resolution analysis. These points resolution, the United States federal government should create incentives to reduce deforestation of a significant percentage of the Amazon rainforest to be more net benefits. This should be rather than less benefits linked to the cost plan versus benefits plans to less a whole policy maker. Observation 2 is inherency. These points that current year's deforestation policies are focused on carbon credits. Arguments that 6.5 billion has been pledged by numerous countries to reduce emissions. However, these are only halfway to the goal. Arguments that private sector is also uniquely key to be able to reinvigorate the sphere. These points that debt swap programs have stalled after the defeat of the Tropical Forest and Conservation Act of 2009 are arguments that the bill is actually co-sponsored by Lugar and Kerry. However, it died on the Senate, indicating that there has no action now. And our CISA point is that the 2012-2010 program did not go to the Amazon. It went to the Atlantic coast of Cerrado and Contiga, and the U.S. and Brazil have signed the $21 million contract on other issues pertaining to those forests. Also, the U.S. has signed a similar program with 15 other countries as the plan.
The United States federal government should, via an act of Congress, establish a bilateral debt-for-nature swap with the Federated Republic of Brazil over the deforestation of the Amazon forest. Again, the United States federal government should, via an act of Congress, establish a bilateral debt-for-nature swap with the Federated Republic of Brazil over deforestation of the Amazon rainforest. Funding and enforcement are via normal means. Any questions?
Yeah, what exactly is a debt-for-nature swap?
It's simple. Brazil owes a large amount of foreign debt to the United States. We cancel the payments they have to make to us regularly and allow conservation efforts to be conducted by the government.
So it's just...
You save your nature, you stop the debt. Observation.
Okay, sure.
Let me explain. Observation 3, solvency.
The points that the U.S. is critical arguments that have a power relationship. Particularly, there's a memorandum signed between the United States federal government and the way in which Brazil was able to articulate, which means we have familiarity with the policies. We also have empirical knowledge. The U.S. has used satellites to be able to deal with the way in which Amazon deforestation has occurred. Our arguments. We also have implementation. We have swayed due to the integral nature of our economies. These points, the debt swaps able to solve previous concerns in the past was used only commercial debt swaps, not the bilateral ones, which involve government. The previous NGOs were failed because Brazil didn't trust them. Our these points, the outside actors not able to solve NGOs lead to a world with no oversight. They also are not able to deal with the fact that the currency exchange is uniquely benefited in a world where we use the U.S. dollar. Also, Brazil is debt calculated on the dollar, meaning it would be a logistical but disaster to be able to do any other country. These points empirically were able to solve. This happened in Jamaica, in which we went from 3% deforestation to only 0.12% deforestation. Also good in Indonesia, in which we are able to save 300 million portions of the way in which the Sumatra forest actually was able to be there. Our arguments also working in Guatemala, in which we were able to reduce deforestation by 17% in the context of a year. The East points are colonial relationships to byproduct that said in the 1970s. They had a couple where they had problems, meaning that other countries were able to use that country as an exporter of raw materials, causing many of the social problems that are caused today. Our also points that we reduced the perverse incentive that the U.S. hangs over them in the status quo, meaning they're able to change their relationship advantage with the Amazon. These points that deforestation is increasing in the status quo. There's been 882 square kilometers in 2012 that were cut down, and it's also increasing CO2 because not only do they cut it down, but the burning that occurs as a result that leads to more CO2 emissions in the air. The these points that debt is the primary cause of Amazon deforestation. It increases the soy prices because it means that there's less of a supply, which increases the cost of demand. It also allows for illegal logging to occur in the region because in order to pay off that thing, they have to go deeper into the Amazon. It also causes cattle ranching to have to expand within that forest because they're trying to do things like increase their agricultural sector in the context of the Amazon. 6 points plans able to solve. One is that we evolve for the fundament of conservation measures to help us deal with the U.S. deal with the way in which they're able to deal with the United States. That means they have to, they can put their money elsewhere. The second argument stabilizes the budget. 72% currently of their GDP is spent on paying back that, meaning that it also decreases the amount they're spending on the environment. We will be able to reverse that relationship, allowing them to be able to focus on that. The third part, we spotlight U.S. industry. Our arguments we're able to influence conservation measures elsewhere. The fourth argument, precautionary principle, key. The Amazon has been called the first lung of the earth, indicating that's probably the reason why we should run the affirmative. These points to climb the first death science and science to prove the Amazon is key. It allows for sequestration to occur, which is critical to what is called a climax community, in which the forests are able to breathe out the CO2, and also forest burning exacerbates this conflict, with allowing for CO2 to be able to rapid. The second argument is to run global warming to extinction, and it allows for the core of the earth to explode to a point where it cannot maintain itself. These points key to famines arguments that it is able to solve biodiversity, farm and natural disasters, or famines, and diseases that happen as a result because they have cultural runoff and the toxic toxicity that they use in the status quo. To also be able to solve for the fact that 25% of all drugs have been found within the context, but only 1% of the forest has actually been seen. Or effort so is the oxygen. Our fourth argument is the Amazon's key to all of life. This is the second lung of the earth, indicating that it controls 50% of the way in which CO2 is able to be dealt with. And the status quo, the second argument is oxygen collapse leads to extinction. We are currently at 20.9%. The brings 19% indicates try to die for the affirmative. The G point is genocide. The one is that these deforestation programs cause indigenous communities to be sacrificed. Arguments that there's 200 in the context. There's also 180 languages in the context for the second is that we've been able to solve that, allowing for us to be able to solve the systemic impacts that are called the cultural genocide laws for the justification of other extinction impacts. The advantage to is U.S.-Brazil cooperation. The explains that Brazil is the debt has means that there's been a decrease, has only increased in the status quo. Our argument is that it's currently at 316.8 billion on the content in December 2012. The reason why is that our debt also decreases cooperation. Arguments that it decreases the economy of Brazil, meaning so that they become completely destabilized. In fact, the OECD recently indicated that it was the most destabilizing influence in the continent of Latin America. It also increases the interest rates across the country, meaning that they have to pay more to be able to invest, was particularly devastating for increasing the economies. The C-Sports plan is able to solve. Our first argument is that it's critical to be able to maintain the differential of the relationship, indicating that Brazil would see the U.S. extending an olive branch to be able to change its ways from the past. The second argument is allow for the elimination of the debt, causing there to be stabilization because Brazil can then use its GDP to have more productive in the context of Latin America. The third argument is also allow for us to have diplomatic dialogue in the context of Brazil is no longer suspicious of us, meaning that we can have the relationship change phase. The fourth argument is able to perceive change from the 1980s, indicating that U.S. policy in the status quo is archaic towards Brazil. Only we would allow for a change which indicate the change from momentum, particularly proven by the fact that we nominated John Kerry and the decent ones that relations are able to start for nuclearization. Brazil and Argentina have a historical face-off in which if they were to win the conflict, the United States would be forced into arguments that this also caused Brazil to become a regional hegemony. In fact, in 1970, they had secret plans for the development of nuclear weapons and were only tied down because the U.S. was able to assuade them. Our arguments that now the U.S. is not taking the similar actions indicating that it's try or die. For that argument, the U.S. will be drawn in conflict, which there were to occur, meaning that we'd have an escalatory global war in the context of Latin America, which would be intervention similar to that during the Roosevelt Cold War era. East point that collapses the tri-border region that causes terrorism. Arguments that Lebanon, Hezbollah, have been recently found within the context of OECD ports to be within the region. Arguments they also do things like currency fraud, and which led to significant political influence, which led to a 1992 bombing of the Israel embassy in Argentina. Or as points that terrorism leads to extinction. First, that the United States will be forced to retaliate again if they were to find uranium in the context of the region. Second is that it's also easier to disperse these things in the context of suitcase. For example, it could be released within a region and cause 500,000 deaths immediately within the cities. Also, Latin American cities are populated to a significant more portion, particularly in the context of Buenos Aires, in which there could be a significant disruption in the way in which life is able to operate. The 6 points that it also collapses the economy. Arguments that in a world where Brazil does not have relations with the U.S., it collapses the way in which goods are able to actually be traded and allows protectionism. It would disrupt the way in which NAFTA operates. In fact, there was analysis that indicated that this rights protectionism is precisely what led to the 1930s. Our 8 points that U.S. collapse, economic collapse leads to conflict. First, that resource wars collapse, meaning that mutually destruction goes out the door because countries are in a try-or-die situation. Also, because the public is a rallying call on other countries to go into intervention prevent. But the way in which the U.S. had public opinion poll supporting after the 1970s to go into other conflicts. Our argument is that this will lead to extinction because other countries have to try-or-die and using their nuclear weapons to be able to maintain superiority.
There's absolutely no thing that can be here. Okay, it's
There's
going.
a chair right here.
There is a chair over
Yeah.
there. Okay, I believe, let me get back to my post to make sure this is right, but I believe it's going to be 3 off and then a bunch of case. You're also going to need a separate sheet of paper at the beginning of case, just kind of a block.
What's the order?
Yeah, let me grab all this up here. Okay, the order on case is just going to be that new sheet of paper, then solvency, then advantage 1, and advantage 2.
Is that new sheet of case one of the off, or is there 3?
No, that new sheet is not considered one of the off. It's just
sure.
my method of keeping the date organized.
Just make sure to signpost when you
Do what?
just make sure to signpost when you get there.
That's all I know how to do, man.
Okay.
There's one thing I'm good at, it's naming arguments. So. All right. All these papers makes this a really ironic debate, in my opinion. Okay. Is everybody ready? Okay.
First argument disadvantage Roosevelt politics. A is unique. This one is that Brazilian President Roosevelt is currently has no capital now. The A argument is that elections are coming soon, but the B argument is going to be that currently she has no running mate. Problem means that she has no political capital to extend past herself. The C argument is that the only environmental minister, Marina Silva, is essentially running against her and using specifically bad environmental policies in her history to run against her. Number 2, the D argument, or this is going to be that also she has not made any reform for mining codes, which means that environmental policies become a huge impact against her. The number 2 is going to be the Roosevelt goals, essentially to install 168 dams in the Amazon River basin. The A under this is that the Supreme Court about 5 months ago approved the rebuilding of this, which means that the
construction is already started on the Belmonte Dam, but it's not finished yet. The number 3 under the uniqueness is going to be that the court is actually going to rehear the case because the UN has actually brought up Human Rights Treaty 169 as a part of it. Our argument is that essentially this is the courts will overrun this, they'll overrun the Rousseff decision for a few different reasons. The first one is going to be that they've received a lot of backlash from environmental groups, which they didn't view it as a human rights abuse before. The next argument is that essentially what I just said. Our argument is that it was a singular ruling, originally viewed as an economic incentive. But our argument is that people didn't examine the human rights abuses that comes about it, meaning that they will specifically backlash against it. Our argument is that this is Rousseff's project and her political capital is directly tied to the building of the dams. The link under this one is going to be the plane increases Rousseff's capital for a few different reasons. One is that she's been asking for the U.S. for involvement for the U.S. involvement for cooperation on Amazon deforestation. The B argument is that this also solves for specific Brazilian policy that people have been calling against, meaning that because she's current president means she gets credit now. The C argument is that the courts imperially will act on politics. You can look to the fact that they actually arrested a Google director just because it was politically popular, and also the fact that they prosecuted U.S. companies before for popular violations. Our argument is that even though the U.S. didn't want them to, they did this because it would affect specific U.S. politics scenarios. The internal link under this is going to be one, the court approves new proposals for dams, which two means that 34 dams would be built in the Amazon River Basin by 2021 to meet energy demands. The impacts under this is going to be indigenous groups would inevitably lose fishing grounds because one, it disrupts fishing migration patterns, but it also disrupts the ability for fishes for fish to spawn. Our argument is going to be this destroys their ability to eat, which is culturally sensitive topic. Our argument is that you can cross-apply their precautionary principle here. You can look to the cultural toolbox. Every culture is probably important. Our argument is that we never know which one is key to survival. We should cherish them all equally. Otherwise, it will lead to extinction. The number 2 is going to be that it also destroys water capabilities. Our argument is that the rivers in the Amazon produce 1/5 of the world's fresh water. Our argument is the one where it contaminates. This ultimately means that the entire world goes extinct. Politics. A uniqueness. One is that the Farm Bill is the next major issue now. One is that fights are coming in steps, but passage is inevitable. It's currently in a 1-year limbo, but essentially, Anders already said on March 7th that he's planning to make this a huge priority, as well as the fact that the 1-year limbo proves that the discussions are still going on. There are two versions of the bill. One is the Democratic bill, which essentially says that there are certain fundings that have to go towards soil erosion techniques as well as sustainable farming practices, which the GOP bill does not do. It provides some money, but doesn't provide direction in which the funding goes. Probably means soil erosion never happens. Our argument is the Democratic bill has unique momentum in the status quo because farmers are backing it, as well as the fact that it's got more media attention. Linked to the plan upsets the GOP for a few different reasons. One is upsets the agenda because it views it as getting involved in an economic policy. Argument is that they don't want sphere of influence in Latin America now, but the next argument is also going to be that they hate environmental policy specifically, which we argue is going to take away because they view the Amazon rainforest as a unique instance of economic gain. Our argument is that this kills GOP, this causes hyper-nationalism in the GOP party, causes Democrats to be backlash against this. The Farm Bill has empirically been backlash against this. It's just proof that the fact that it hasn't passed yet means that this is most likely scenario for a backlash. Our argument is the impacts. First, it's going to be that the Democratic bill doesn't pass means that sustainable farming techniques never happen. You can look towards the fact that this causes the Great Plains to be destroyed because it means that people will always use bad soil erosion techniques, as well as pump chemical and pesticides into the country. Means that water secretion for the Amazon rainforest goes away anyways. Currency entirely affirmative because we don't have the ability to process water means that the Amazon collapses. And also it destroys our food aid capability because we cannot produce food aid fast enough. This ultimately means that 2.5 million people starve instantly. Our argument is that this is a moral imperative vote here because food is probably a prerequisite to living. Okay, so Counterplan, the People's Republic of China should establish a bilateral debt for nature swap with the Federation Republic of Brazil or the deforestation of the Amazon rainforest. It's the same things that People's Republic of China use. Yes.
Question?
Yes.
Would then, if China did it, would it be unpopular for yourself?
I mean,
like if China's like, you got your debt, man. Like, would she be unpopular?
What's the status?
It's conditional.
It's conditional.
That's what we're doing. Yeah.
It's conditional and...
To answer your question, it's conditional. Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So obviously the first argument is going to be that China's #1 trading partner means that probably means that Brazil will listen to them more, but more importantly, arguments that they hold more debt. China holds more Brazil's debt than the U.S. and number 3 is also going to be that our argument is going to be that it brings a time. What was this argument?
It's an authority argument. United States companies don't really do.
Arguments that the U.S. companies aren't as heavily involved in the area. Chinese companies are probably means that we sell better for your deforestation arguments. The next argument is also that yeah, that's all we need on that. All right, so new block. Status quo solves the for a bunch of different reasons. One argument is going to be that increases. Argument is going to be that increased focus on global warming internationally has led to an immense amount of decrease in Amazon logging. Argument is that $2 billion were provided from Norway to Brazil specifically for environmental emissions made from deforestation. The third argument is going to be that indigenous groups also make up about 20% of the forest locations, means that security titles have actually stopped logging in certain areas in this. The fourth argument is going to be that since 2004, Amazon drilling has actually decreased 80%, and we're actually at the lowest drilling since 1980s. Probably answers back to uniqueness on their advantages. The argument is that this is attributed to microeconomic agreements as well as the protected areas that we highlighted before. The fifth argument is that NGOs have actually had huge publications for anti-logging campaigns, means that there's a huge political support for this. And then that last argument is six is that essentially companies would say no to the plan. Arguments that China companies make up the vast majority of the plan probably means you never saw back. China solves better. The next argument is going to, Okay. On the solvency, the first argument is going to be that they say that they are familiar with, they say the U.S. can solve because it's a familiar policy. No impact of this. China owns more than that. Probably means they're going to be more successful with this. Next argument, they say current exchange. They say the current exchange allows for it's calculated on the dollar. Argument is that Brazil still owes China more, but also empirical solvency for them means that there's only a 1% decrease. Probably means we sell better in the world, but we sell for more companies logging on. Advantage one specifically. First off, cross-apply that this is the lowest levels. Cross-apply that they are lowest drilling levels since 1980s. Means that it's not increasing in status quo. Next argument is that they say the reduction is important. Argument is that argument is going to be on soy prices. Our first argument is going to be the soy. So we are actually reducing imports of soy now. Probably means that huge portions of soy prices increase anyway. Next argument is turn decreased forestation actually decreases the ability for soy farmers to use slash and burn techniques to gain soy. Means that soy prices increase anyways. Next argument is that the argument is going to be argument is also going to be that
They say genocide. Indigenous groups have protections now.
Argument is that these indigenous groups have protections now, but also they never get to their economic collapse. They never get to their biodiversity collapse. Argument is that species are resilient as well as that never highlight a brink on their precautionary principle. Arguments. Argument is that water is more of a lot of is a better internal link into biodiversity. Advantage two. They say that Brazil's economy is decreasing. Cross-apply Norway is already providing money for them specific for economic gains on environmental issues. Next month.
Terrorism.
They also say terrorism. Our argument is going to be, we saw back with the entirety of the SIU, actually increase terrorism more in a world where our argument is that Colombia is actually expecting our help from Brazilian rainforest decreasing now in a world where we give it to Brazil. Problem means they align with Hezbollah more. Terrorism increases anyways. Next argument is that Brazil is not focused on the military now. Problem means they won't rearm.
Brazil politics, United States politics, news sheet.
A news sheet?
Correct.
Okay. I know, but is there a news sheet?
Actor Counterplan.
I don't know what that new sheet is.
Case. Same word. Judges. Texas. First, the Brazil politics is being, as you can understand, the number one argument on why the status quo would solve the case. The new tide of investment that's going on and from the new types of international actors that are right now are focusing on carbon credits going on right now, which means independently there's a new type of credibility that's going on in the status quo. However, we've already indicted carbon credits within the PMC, indicating the carbon credits are not able to solve back because they're still being illegal logged, which means that the Brazilian government can't take charge, means the plan is prioritized to be able to solve back for the Brazilian government, and it's the only reason that's why independently the government is getting credibility from international actors in other areas now. Just the United States cooperation is high in all of the areas. The first argument is we just as a bit of mobility signing with Cyprus means independently looks like the political ramifications of deforestation going to increase within Brazil. The second argument is the United States focusing on REDD programs, which is increasing carbon credits, but those will not resolve any of the affirmative because they still allow illegal company with no new reservations. The third argument is we're aiming to curbing types of inflation as right now, i.e. we're cooperating with Rooftop and the status quo to be able to curb types of foreign direct investment that are going on within. Brazil means independently she's already taken the credit from the United States. Additionally, next argument is drone cooperation that's going on with the United States, specifically on surveillance of Amazon rainforest means she would have already taken the political capital. The seventh argument is absolutely no uniqueness argument. She's not a political capital or can research because she did not reform her economic cabinet, which means that the high amounts of inflation that are going on within Brazil right now are actually the reason I should not be able to get any more political capital. The next argument is absolutely no link. The courts are ideological means independently they will always be able to distance themselves from the Rooftop Court and the Resource Court in the past. Additionally, that is empirically proven given their zoning regulations of the previous dam building in the past. She was only able to do this through new type of legislation means it's probably inevitable the app's trying to be able to solve this. Additionally, the next argument turn of the plan would make it look like Rooftop is giving in the United States before the WTO ruling that's coming in the status quo. In fact, this is empirically proven in 2010 when they signed a debt swap deal with the United States federal government means independently they would only use NGOs in this instance. That means that it makes Rooftop look comparatively more unpopular than the plan. Is prior question to be able to solve that or the way that environmentalists would act. Additionally, turn the plan is absolutely necessary to rally new types of environmental court decisions means that the public would have a more of an incentive to be able to rally against the courts to be able to solve that or the impacts of new type of mining deconstruction. Additionally, the impacts are absolutely inevitable. It just means that Rooftop would be able to sign types of executive order which do not have the ability to be struck down in the court in the future because they have already ruled in previous time means that deforestation is going to happen. Additionally, we solve the terminal impact case. You are talking about the indigenous debt swaps infinitely solved that for the indigenous. China can't do it because they have not recognized the tribes. The United States already has a recognition formula process, which means that we solve terminal impact politics. First argument that I'd like to extend is several non-unique arguments I make on the Brazilian politics is that these are why the perception of the United States already increasing type of deforestation efforts going on within the world as right now, specifically the United States has already got Cyprus to have a new type of debt swap program. The red programs that are focusing on right now and the aiming to curb inflation means we're already focusing on new types of Brazilian policies in the status quo. Additionally, you are not on top of the topic. The Farm Bill is just a lie. The only things that are on the docket as right now, one, a new continuing resolution to be able to focus on veteran affairs. Two is a resolution to be able to allow derby cars to be used on White House materials. And the third argument is a new resolution to be able to allow the memorial service to be on the White House grounds means that there's no impetus for any of your planned trade-off arguments to occur because it's not even on the docket right now. It's only being debated. Additionally, the Farm Bill will never pass because CBO budget predictions indicated they would have to cut the stash programs, which means that cotton lobbies are already backlash to the new type of Farm Bill in the status quo because they don't think they'll get crop insurance programs in. Will never be a battle. Additionally, next argument is no link to any of your argument because we actually get rid of the United States foreign debt means it is probably comparatively more popular for any of your GOP arguments and that probably serves as a link term. Additionally, next argument is FIAT takes out the link that our interpretation of FIAT is that happens immediately, which means that they'd be able to solve that for any of the reasons. That's why the GOP can actually horse trading or political ramifications. Additionally, next argument votes are ideological means the United States cooperating in other issue with Brazil would inevitably trigger any type of agricultural backlash. They will always backlash against the plan. Next argument is turn losers. When the GOP looks like they lose out in this issue, it's actually a reason. That's why they have a more of an incentive to be able to stabilize the Farm Bill in the future because they still want to be able to take something back to their constituency. The next argument is turn we're able to concrete the agenda. We make it stable that the United States federal government would be able to comply with its previous negotiations with the foreign nations means that it's comparatively more likely we have a stable budget to be able to increase these steps to all branches in the future and the turn arguments being collapsed to democratic base, which is absolutely necessary for the Farm Bill as right now because they're the only ones who have an incentive to be able to curb that the cotton lobby. Additionally, next argument is we would deliver new types of food and absolutely inevitably the United States has emergency programs like PL480 Title II that have these types of food resources. We would be able to solve that or terminal impact. Next off the condo. This one is the interpretation that they continue to give one conditional accuracy or the status quo that they give against one conditional accuracy or the status quo they violate the interpretation. The beast point is this is bad for partly the first argument lack of backstar rebuttal feeds independently. The MGSQ is absolutely necessary. It only happens in a world in which they read on conditional strategy. This is comparatively worse within an area of topic areas because the MO has a new type of test of multiple strategies. They can read the second argument of consistency. There is no evidence cross-text prep or frontlines means that we would never be able to guess the best answers who a slew of unconditional positions. Consistency is absolutely critical for the MG shot in the dark because the only way to have absolute clarity in debate. Additionally, this is working topic areas because they have an incentive to increase the type of polemic debates because they understand that the judges have also done topic area research means they can get away with literally just reading Counterplan text and these ones conditionality and partly as a voter. The first argument is competitive equity and education. The second argument is conditionality partly creates a negative social sidewise means the negative will always win. This last debate which he says bad. Additionally, external benefits from this round do not outweigh the overall collapse of the debate. Additionally, conditionality means that you can just wash your hands of the new type of impact calculus which allows systemic violence to continue in the interim active counterplan. The first argument is permutation, do both the plan and the counterplan. There is no competition arguments. And next argument is the permutation independently with something links to both the distance. The first argument is the massive looks like environmental consciousness is going on within Brazil and Sasco means that they will be able to solve back for the environmentalists who are rallying chorus all going on. Second argument is independently shifts the focus of international concerns means it looks like the United States is being able to contain China, which means it is able to get the GOP on board. The beast one is the solve back for the third of the United States key. You can sense obviously number one argument, the currency exchange argument means it would be a logistical nightmare for Brazil. They already calculate currency. It's not a matter of money, it's a matter of their computer regulating systems means they have to shift back to new types of NGOs which empirically fail. The second argument is the counterplan doesn't solve any of U.S.-Brazil relations. You can see that it's absolutely critical of new type of nuclearization. They only have an incentive to be able to increase nuclearization in the world which China acts additionally. Next argument that just had is this prompts the United States to be hard line with Brazil. They would be able to decrease new types of surveillance technologies, which only allows new types of surveillance mechanism to fail in status quo. China does not have that surveillance mechanism or that technology, which means that deforestation hotspots increase in all of the areas status quo solves. The first argument is that focus on global warming as of right now, but that is only focusing on carbon credits for the trees, which does not solve any of the problems about illegal mining. New type of governmental infrastructure is absolutely necessary, which means you can't solve back any advantages. Additionally, the debt would still increase, which means even if they give carbon credits, that doesn't get to the government, which means the government still has an incentive to allow new logging. Additionally, you say that secret titles are for the indigenous as of right now. That's fine, don't have to go for that. Impact probably means that secret titles protect the advantage of Brazilian politics, but no impact your just had. Next argument is deforestation decreasing now. It's just not true. You have not concluded the most recent data. Deforestation increased 18% as the Brazilian foreign debt has also increased means that independently we are focusing on the most recent satellite imaging that has been conducted by the United States. You say in geos, we have already, you say in geo publications, NGOs have an incentive to lie because they want to get money, which means that they're not indicative about the scenario. You say that Brazil says no word to this. They said yes to the United States in 2010. They would also do it now because they get comparatively more money solvency. You say China has more success, not an argument. We've already answered that argument. China doesn't have the technology or the currency exchange. Brazil have an incentive to say no to China because they don't have the prior infrastructure or cooperation. Additionally, Brazil feels like China is only exploiting the natural resources, i.e. their oil reserves, means that they have an incentive to say no to the counterplan. Additionally, you say that there's only 1% of the food going as of right now. This is largely about logistics, means that Brazil has to change their currency system to be based off the yuan, which is rated comparatively less than the United States. They would only get 16 cents for every dollar they would get to the United States, means that they have an incentive to continue the cooperation that's already going on, and they fear the United States taking away technology. They would say yes comparatively more, and there's one. You say lowest level, we've already answered the starting most recent satellite data proves. You say increase in toy price debts right now. Debt is the prior question. Debt is the reason why Brazil is not able to switch back from other types of corn production. They have to provide new types of soy because the United States perversion, which means debt is the prior question. Answering both of these arguments, you say that protections are occurring as of right now. That is the lie that is propagated by loggers, which means that independently you have a precautionary element to prefer. You say water is absolutely critical good. We solve water. You can see the toxicity impact of deforestation because of illegal mining methods in Brazil. You say we solve terrorism. Nowhere to that argument. China only increases the provocation of the attempt to asymmetrical taxes. You say you increase Colombia aid. No uniqueness to this argument. The United States is already conducting operations in Brazil. That's an entire unique element.
Okay. Gonna go China counterplan, Brazil just add, conditionality, case, in the order of the LOC block, then the PNC order, then farm bill. Yeah.
Can you do it one more time?
Yeah, for sure. Brazil, China, condo, LOC case block, case in order, politics.
Did you say Counterplan is on top or Brazil is on top? Okay.
I'm sorry?
Did you say Brazil is that on top?
Brazil is on top. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just 1 second, a little slower to that.
Okay, yeah. Brazil, China,
politics, China,
condo, case,
okay, and then
politics.
It's right over there.
Oh, I was looking for the tub. I was like a policy-based default thing. Tubs are doing money. Anyone not ready? Brazil not going forward, extending impacts enough control decided executive order means there's no risk of human generated leak charge that's dependent on this argument. Not going forward, next argument is China, guys, first argument is permutation, test competition, not actually all their offense, not applying when we're not going forward. Alright. Conditionality. First argument is counter-interpretation. We get one conditional accuracy solved by all of your offense. They points that you, the stress can be isolated and everyone because we'll just read through this that you never know which one we're going for, which is just as bad as you not knowing if we're going for the counterplan with the status quo, which is there. No, there's no effect to that. Also, you should prefer to counter-interpretation. Ace point is only encouraged there, the data flexibility was important because you get first last speech, and we only get the ability to generate all of our offense to all of your answers, but also we increase education because we allow for depth of education and talk about things. So it's depth is a number because people always do research. The question of the number of things we love in the main round. You say the skills topics with giving education are arguments that you kill the incentive to research. Because teams don't get to cut. Don't get to read all the sweetness as they come, which is bad. Or education, you say collapse debate. No way, counsel's debate. You guys will obviously debate again, and this round isn't perceived anywhere else, and it's not an independent voting issue because it's.
Don't vote on MG theory.
Oh, also, you don't vote on MG theory. Okay, case.
Wait, what?
Wait, why do you not want to vote on MG
Because
theory?
they get new answers.
Oh yeah, because they get golden line answers to all of my arguments in Parliament that's uniquely worse than that because the inherent structure of the activity puts at us at a unique disadvantage because of the way the PMR gets golden line answers. Case debate. I'm not sure the MG extends a single impact to either of these arguments, to either of their advantages, so you should not evaluate the PMR with a high level of skepticism. But we are ahead on the status quo solves the affirmative argument. You say that we're just lying about what lawyers do, but you've conceded that there is empirical. You say it's increased 18% from last year. There's not a war behind that besides satellite imaging proof. We are doing a comparative analysis of their impact claims. For them to win this debate, they have to win if they save the entirety of the Amazon. The problem, however, is that they've conceded that since the 80s, we have made massive reductions and CO2 is at an all-time low compared to where we've been before, even if it's marginally increasing. You've conceded the fact that your empirical example indicates that you only, your Jamaican example indicates that you only decrease deforestation by 1%. If you look back to their solvency argument for the PMC, their Jamaican empiric says that they move it from 3.2 to 1.2. That's like maybe a 2% decrease. There's no way you solve back for all the Amazon and all of the global warming arguments. You've also done solve things like India and China producing tons of global warming, which means that impacts methods inevitable and has a long time frame. And you've conceded that the disadvantage will turn the case, which means there's no way for you to solve that. You say that they'll say yes to the plan. Our argument is that you still not solve Chinese companies who do not say yes to the plan. That is problematic because they own, Chinese companies own the area twice the size of California and have no reason to make nice with the United States because they make tons of big. Yeah.
You say that you would never vote for MG theory because we get the PMR. Does that mean the PMR cannot answer your new MO analysis, like about India and China?
Our argument is that you create like I get to choose those arguments. You created a structural argument that, like, yeah, the difference is that I get to choose the new arguments I make. You force us to answer your argument that you get to be tricky within the PMR. Okay, but you get to answer them, sure. That's not our argument. Okay, solvency debate. They don't extend an impact here. You should, oh, actually no, just go to Advantage 1, Amazon. They don't extend an impact here. Global warming is a long time frame, and there's no impact. There's no impact to an extent of the MG. You should not allow them to extrapolate a deal. They will go. You've also conceded this genocide argument that indicates that indigenous groups are gaining protections in the status quo, which means there's no impact to that either. But
they also conceded that decreasing deforestation means soy prices rising.
Oh yeah, you've also conceded that decreasing deforestation increases soy prices, which is an internal link to the advantage. You should go to Brazil-United States cooperation. First argument is that you've conceded that you increase terrorism because Colombia and FARC spill over as a result of seeing the United States backlashing to them. You only respond to this in the Chinese argument. You do not extend and impact your solvency argument here. You should not again allow them to weigh that. We will win the politics just said we'll turn all this back because it crushes United States relations when the Amazon no longer exists because of bad United States politics. You will vote negative on politics because they will not be able to generate a sufficient link term because they have zero issue-specific uniqueness on the question of the farm bill. They only read one top-level argument that indicates that farm bill passage will not happen. They concede the argument that that is inevitable because it's too big of a political issue. It's only a question of the Democrat version or the Republican version gets through. You've conceded the fact that the Democratic version has momentum now because farmers behind it and that's media focus. There's only a risk that you upset that balance through the link arrow is going in our favor. You say that cross-line perception arguments about enforcement. You've not. Those arguments do not unique or link arguments. You can see the fact that the agenda is uniquely important. Also, the Republicans hate new regulations in Congress. There's no congressional bill coming up in the status quo. All of your perception arguments indicate NGOs are coming, which means that there's no perception of this. The CISO point is that there also is new reckless spending that's spun by the GOP to say Obama. You say that it's not top of the docket. First argument is that it's the next major issue. By Bader said on March 7th, the talks are coming in. You say there's no bill. That's why now is the key time. Our arguments that the Democrats have leveraging power to get in popular with Republicans. Status quo plan. The rails that you say there's no reason why they backlash. Our arguments that there's empirical examples that other environmental policies cause backlash on the farm bill. That's proven. Why? By the fact that we're in the one-year limbo right now. They make the sturdy cars argument. I'm not sure what it is. It's looked at. You should not give them tons more argument. You say there's no bill on the docket. Our arguments that there are ideological lines already drawn. You say farm bill won't pass because of crops and insurance battles are. You can see the top level analysis indicating the farm bill is too big of a political issue for anyone to take the hit on because farmers are a massive lobby and most people want them. It's only a question of what version gets passed. Your argument about crop insurance just fuels our uniqueness indicates that there are internal disputes going on right now is whether or not you allow for eligibility requirements because those two things are uniquely linked back to each other. You say that you say links are because we decrease Brazil's debt. Couple that, all that does is piss off Republicans more because they want the United States to be making money, especially because you say field self-link does not avoid our specific agenda arguments. Also, is an independent reason to reject the team because they can just spike out of every disadvantage which is uniquely bad. You say that the vote is too ideological because Brazil what?
They just say votes are too ideological to change now.
Oh, you say votes are too ideological to change now? That's not true. That's the reason why we're in the 1 year limit, because Republicans said they want to also better said this open to talks in the status quo, which is the reason why there's only uniqueness going this question. You've also dropped the fact that the Farm Bill passage is largely inevitable, which means there's no way for that happened. It's only a question if you disrupt that. You said losers win because it increases the Republicans' ability to generate offense. Our argument is that the Republicans would never they never gain any capital from this plan or increase and this is nonsense. There's no reason why losers win. Extrapolating that, you say that they would just subsidize, or I don't know what they say.
They say they have a concrete agenda.
Oh, you said they have a concrete agenda. Our argument is that they're open to negotiations acceptable, which is the reason why we're in the 1 year limbo. You can see the fact that the impact to not passing the Democratic Farm Bill means the Great Prairies collapse as a result of ongoing messing up of the Great Plains region by American farmers that pump things like pesticide and bad soil erosion practices. After the Great Plains existence, the Democratic version would check this back because it mandates that they use effective soil erosion techniques and water sustainability practices. And what water sustainability practices that kills the United States' ability to develop food in the long term, which kills millions of people instantly, but it also cripples our ability to help the Amazon. You can see the fact that the Amazon is hemispherically dependent on the Great Prairie ecosystems because of carbon sequestration and water purification that it provides for the Amazon collapse of the Great Prairie ecosystem would massively cripple international food aid. You've also conceded the devastating argument that in case you have a moral obligation, we will obviously win a risk of this argument. They will not win a risk of penalty because they don't have an issue-specific uniqueness question on that, which means there's no way for them to solve that fact. You can see that there's a moral imperative to distribute food equally regardless of the consequences because live food is a prerequisite to life, is prerequisite to farming. All of your argument, you say term we kill the Democratic base is the only ones who have the case of solving this. There's no way you kill the Democratic base. You only upset Obama. Democrats would like the plan. There's no reason why they would backlash. They're obviously the only ones who are calling for incentives in the status quo, and there's no extrapolation of how you kill the Democratic base. Don't allow Josh to stun on this question because they've left something out. You say food aid is inevitable. That only assumes a world where the United States can grow food. You drop the fact that there is no propensity for us to grow food when the Great Plain becomes Idiocracy 2.0, which means that there's no way for us to do any sort of food distribution at all, which kills the Amazon and causes 2 million people to die. Even if they win all their extinction plans, which they didn't say impact to in the MG, you'll vote on the moral imperative argument for Farm Bill.
Okay, there's going to be a short overview on top. We're then going to go to condo. Can you use that chair?
Sure.
Case and then Farm Bill. And case is in original order, so we're going to get that new sheet of status quo solves all the way through to page 2. I'm sorry? Yeah, absolutely. It's going to go overview on top, condo, the status quo solves arguments, advantage 1, advantage 2, then Farm Bill. I'm going to turn it this way so you guys can see my facial expression so you know how serious I am. Alright. Does anyone need me to repeat that order, or is everybody good? Okay. The only chance that they have to win this round is by going for condo bad. Not only are we winning unique arguments, this is why you're going to be airing neg on theory on this question. They are literally only have this chance because they have conceded the entirety of arguments as to one, why the status quo solves all of their app, but more importantly, why we have a specific moral imperative that they have no offense against. Go to conditionality. First off, the only arguments that they can say, the only arguments that I think they can send across here is that somehow it leads to an MG strat skew. I think Joey does a good job of explaining to you how this is probably more of a negative strat skew in a world where they have the ability to make second-line answers, as well as the fact that it kills any incentive to research. In a world where this is true, our ability to run these types of counterplanes is probably critical to be able to compete in debate. You're not going to be voting on this piece of paper. If it is, I'll probably cry. Go to the status quo. A couple of arguments here that one mitigate the entirety of their alpha probably means that they're going to solve back. Extend across the two arguments that Joey says, and this is Norway, as well as the fact that they only solve for about 1% of the entirety. Our argument is that we are winning specific uniqueness, how one, deforestation is decreasing now, which is probably a good incentive as to why you're going to, as to why you're going to be preferring the Farm Bill politics, but more importantly, it's also going to indicate why the Farm Bill politics is going to outweigh. If they can only decrease 1% of deforestation, probably means that we have more of the ability to solve back to this in a world where we decrease Amazon rainforest collapse due to water sequestration of the Great Plains. They've conceded that impact means that we have a straight turn to the entirety of their affirmative that is probably being solved. Advantage 1. Couple of arguments here that go cold conceded. First off, that soy imports to the soy imports to the United States are being reduced now means that soy prices are being increased immensely in the status quo. They do not answer this argument means that the entirety of their advantage probably goes away. It's already happening. The next argument is also going to be extended. Yeah, that's all we need on that. We saw back to the Amazon rainforest in a world where they can see that in a world where the only impact defense they have is on food aid and not Great Plains water sequestration to the Amazon rainforest. Advantage 2. Another instance of why we win the debate is because they even conceded a number of arguments as to why the Brazilian rainforest is probably not focused on the military now, but more importantly, why there's literally no uniqueness to any of their arguments. They have conceded a number of defensive reasons as to why U.S. logging companies are already decreasing now, and the Brazilian economy is being resilient due to Norway's interaction. This ultimately means that you're always going to see the advantage 2 is being solved back for the app, and more importantly, if they only do a 1% decrease of this, probably means they don't solve for the advantage 2, but very well anyways. So this is why you're going to be preferring farm bill. None of their arguments have, none of their unique disclaims interact with their links, and the ones that do have literally no warrants underneath them because he had to get through them too quickly. Our argument is that in a world where you can see, that one, that major passage is an issue. It doesn't matter if the bill is currently on the docket because the bill is on the docket. We admit that. That's the status quo. The question is what bill goes to the docket. Our argument is that the Democratic bill currently has momentum, but in a world where one, you increase a focus on environmental policies, 2, upset the Republican agenda, or 3, is also viewed as decreased in sphere of influence, concentration on another country, probably means that you interact with the Republicans. They have no warrants as to why, one, they have concrete agendas or losers wins. Our argument is that all these arguments are probably not turns. They're just uniqueness arguments at best. Means that there is no offensive reason to solve back. There's no offensive reason that they do. The only turn that they can go for is losers win. But not only do they have a warrant for that argument, I would probably say that we're reading specific uniqueness. How the Farm Bill is the main target of empirical backlash against most political escapes, especially within the last couple of years, means that there's empirics on our side that this would be the next major issue to collapse. Our argument is that when a world where even if we don't win that food aid is a moral imperative, we still turn back the entirety of their affirmative because they concede that the Great Plains being destroyed by pesticides makes it impossible for the Amazon rainforest to filter water. Means that food aid is probably a tiebreaker on this instance at a risk.
Advantage 2 is U.S.-Brazil cooperation. Their solvency page, our solvency page, and then the politics to set. Judges? The ballot will say absent a counterplan is try or die for the affirmative. Failure to engage with Advantage 2 means unless we reduce to death, massive stabilization causes terrorism and economic collapse, which will turn their dissent and make the politics dissent impossible to vote for at the end of this debate. Advantage 1 is Amazon first. Testing Tech makes a pretty damning argument when they only give us a link when they go to disadvantage and merely say that if we solve deforestation, that increases soy prices. They do not understand our argument, which indicates that that increase, that only a death swap will be able to make it so that they no longer have to deal with soy and they go to other crops, which is our argument, which indicates you only give a solvency to the affirmative. This also solves the entirety of your politics dissent because you concede the argument that they would be able to go to crops, which actually goes to nourishment, which means that we would be able to solve for any food aid having to go into the future, solving for starvation. Absent any other argument, give me a little leeway on how blippy this increased soy price argument is on the case, meaning you give me leverage to weigh the PMC advantage too. Go there now. They made a similar mistake here when they indicated that we will merely increase terrorism. However, you've conceded that there's no uniqueness for this turn because the U.S. is already engaged in the region, which means there's only a risk of our lane turn, which is conceded, indicating that only in the world where the United States actually removes the debt can we stabilize the region, because there's been reports from the OECD indicating that this is the root cause terrorism. Search the entirety of your affirmative because it indicates in the world where the United States finds out where it happens, it leads to nuclear retaliation, obviously leading to nuclear winter, no food, and order we all die from radiation. Go to... Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You don't extend the impact of terrorism in the MG.
I mean, terrorism is a scenario Mike extends. I'm doing the.
I also think this is a silly litmus test. You never explicitly say the word Norway. However, you allow JT to say it in the LOR. I think that when we go to the advantages and we make the answers, we are explicitly extending the impacts and answering why we still get the advantages.
I think all you say is it's non-unique and don't extend your impact, but I'm sure it's under consideration. Yeah.
333.
Yes, that's right.
All right. I'm now on statistical source.
They try to go hard for log agencies decreasing in the status quo. Probably a bad idea to go for defense. We've already given reasons why the soy impact is independent from this argument. We also have 3 devastating reasons why this is not true. The first step, we go for the water impact indicating the acidity still occurs. You've also seen the uniqueness argument indicating there's an 18% increase, but you've also seen the other argument that said that you should prefer our analysis because US satellites have indicated deforestation happens. Remember, their evidence comes from the NGL publications about logging, probably an incentive to lie. They don't have an adequate response to that. They say we don't solve China and India. This is a new argument. We would be able to solve that argument because this is the second lung of the earth, and even if you don't think we solve this, it's brand new. Give the PMR a little leeway. They said to Satursky's, I'll get to that later. They say China company says no. You can see that Brazil says yes, which is the only thing that's uniquely able to solve for the environment, because they probably would kick them out, meaning we solve for the entirety of our advantage. Way that gets their argument. Go to our solvency page. Their long time frame for warming arguments are new within the MO means that we already solved that argument. If anything, the US and Brazil cooperation will be able to solve that because 15% of all greenhouse emissions comes from there. They say indigenous protection. We're not going for that internally. You say that we decrease in deforestation, decrease the price of soy. I already answered that argument. You've also seen the argument why there's a reason why Brazil would actually kick China out because they see it as exploitative. No reason why they're saying no to the plan. Politics. All right. First, the uniqueness debate. I'll make this very simple for you. They say that the Democrats currently have momentum to be able to pursue this bill now. However, we have 2 arguments for why there would have been the perception that the Democrats would have had to back away. The first, the debt swap agreements, and 2010 indicated that there would have had to have been a battle over this question. But our second and non-unique is pretty devastating because it's in the context of the inflation policy that's already happening in the status quo. Which, if your argument is true that the GOP doesn't like regulations or spending or anything about Latin America, that would have been triggered by the fact that the administration is currently cooperating on dealing with their banks in the status quo. Moreover, group this argument about how the agenda is key. We would be able to prove arguments why this is not critical. The first is you conceded that the only thing on the docket is continuing resolution. This also is pretty devastating when you concede the argument how the CBO recently indicated that the cotton lobby backlash because of the way in which stacks were told were going to be cut, indicated that would have already happened. You've also conceded the damning argument which is votes are ideological, which means there's no risk of there being any political capital because that's not how politics works. They would vote against the politics bill anyway. Moreover, we are able to resolve your link debate. This is entirely predicated on the Democrats being able to maintain their bill. They've conceded the argument that we concrete the agenda, making the Democrats look stronger because we got other countries to comply with us in a multilateral framework. This does not mean that they have to backlash against Obama. This means that they perceive Obama to be such a leader that they would not backlash on the Farm Bill because it would look ridiculous after such a win. Think about this in the context of when healthcare were passed. Obama looks good. It allowed for them to win an election. This was an argument that's not particularly answered well, which we think is going to win the debate. Moreover, they're also conceding the impact defense, which is pretty devastating. They only try to go really hard for this food impact. However, they've conceded that food aid is inevitable. PL82 is what Mike spells out for you. That's an emergency bill that is separate from the Farm Bill. They don't have an answer to this argument, which indicates that even in a world where you say more obligation, that there's no uniqueness for that turn. And also, only we would be able to have that go our way because we solve for your food dilemma as per advantage.
They say it's only indicative of the United States growing food, but we would borrow from international nations. That's an emergency aid program.
Yeah, they say it's only indicative of the United States growing food, but we would borrow from other nations. And we also have reserve supplies, which is indicated by the fact that there are giant silos sitting around Illinois with a bunch of corn and stuff. Our argument is also that you concede the winners win analysis, indicating that even if the GOP lost, they would rally harder later to be able to cooperate with the Democrats to solve the bill. There's no risk of any defense on the policy set. You can set across our terrorism scenarios resolves on this issue because in one nuclear winter, we wouldn't be able to get food because there's no, agriculture.
Go smoke cigarettes.